Hallo, mein Name ist Thomas Krick. Jetzt kann ich meine Präsentation leider nicht mehr sehen, deswegen will ich das nochmal kurz. Da sind wir. Alles klar. Hello, my name is Thomas Crick. Contrary to what my colleague said earlier, actually this presentation was planned to be in English. Sorry for the slight delay, but I'm delighted to be here with you now. So, a few words about me. This is a delay. I lead the Deloitte German sustainability practice. We cover all sorts of sustainability challenges with our clients, from developing strategies on stuff like climate change and human rights, all the way to reporting and assurance on these and other issues. I want to speak to you today about my point of view on what leadership position in the sustainability space. But before I do that, I'll seek to set the scene by looking at some of the drivers of corporate sustainability. So clearly, some of you may be familiar with the World Economic Forum's Global Risk Report. What you see on this slide is a survey of what kind of risks have been considered as most likely and most impactful over time. And as you can see in 2020, the top row of these two charts, environmental risks have taken all top spots in terms of likelihood, and 3 of the top spots in terms of impact have also been environmental ones. Even the red one, which stands for society under impact, is related to the environment. It represents the societal risks from water, such as risks of loss of livelihood or conflicts. And as you can also see here, in comparison, technical and economic factors, the kinds of issues that business is historically pretty good at dealing with, have taken a backseat over recent years. So clearly, based on these survey results, it's clear that business risk exposure is one reason to take action towards sustainability. But there are other reasons. And now Yes, and these are the reasons ultimately other stakeholders, investors, governments, citizens, NGOs, they're all basically becoming more and more persistent in demanding sustainability from business. I'm sure you've heard about 1 or 2 of these developments during the course of the day already. There's the Paris Agreement, which we all know. There's an EU Green Deal, which is tightening climate change regulations. There's an EU action plan for financing sustainable growth, all this on the international level. Then on the national level, in Germany, you have specific regulatory developments, such as on reporting with the CSR Richtlinienumsetzungsgesetz, or current debates on supply chain sustainability, which are also, again, reflected on the European level. In financial markets, you have rapidly growing investor interest, interest of investors and lenders. And this is also reflecting itself in a lot of new voluntary market standards, the Financial Stability Board, and virtually all financial market institutions and multi-stakeholder and industry agencies are kind of dealing with the topic right now and are battling it out to determine what sustainable financial markets can look like in the future, and what the means of interaction should be between companies and financial markets, the information that companies should disclose, the practices companies should pursue. And then last but not least, we have the more kind of civil and public dimension. And this is really around the, here we're talking about NGOs. We've all heard of Extinction Rebellion, and naturally we'll know or have seen Greta Thunberg and the Fridays for Future initiative, and also seen the impact this initiative has had. Many of us have had conversations with our children about where this world is going, the role that business plays in it. And consumers are also increasingly voting through their purchasing decisions. It's not always 100% clear whether consumers pay more for a sustainable product, but what's pretty uncontestable is that you take 2 products which are of similar quality in all various characteristics, similar design, so on and so forth, make one more sustainable in a credible manner, and the consumer is very likely to take that. So it is relevant for your sales. But sustainability is a really big word, and it contains a whole bunch of subjects. ESG is an often used acronym that comes in very handy here. Now, ESG stands for this really broad range of environmental issues that may be considered as important to a company's sustainability. Just to pick a few examples. In the environmental space, for example, with climate change, we have an issue which is usually important for pretty much all companies, but how specifically it is important, what the management implications are, that will vary quite a lot. And it's based on the question of where the most significant impact of this company's value chain are to climate change. Is it in the supply chain? Is it in the own operations or through the product? Water, biodiversity are other environmental issues which don't really need to be a top priority for all companies. If you're an information technology company, water and biodiversity are probably less important concerns for you. If you are an infrastructure, then these are issues that you're going to want to look at closely and manage them more diligently. And the same applies to social topic. Human rights, a very prominent subject in the moment, is especially important to those companies that have labor-intensive value chains, for example, in the fast-moving consumer goods industry. Then if you have more like community relationship topics or community investments, this is going to be very important for companies that have severe impacts on land use, particularly in regions where the population may have less access to economic opportunity, living off the land, so on and so forth. So that might apply to the extractives industry, for example. Governance topics are also very diverse. Here the diversity is often a question of the operating region, the legal form, the business relationships. So yeah, lots of different potential topics. How do you prioritize them and decide, what's really important? This is I know this is a long-winded way of approaching the leadership questions, but it's really, really important to be clear about how do you set your priorities as you think about leading on sustainability, because I think there are a lot of claims out there about sustainability leadership, which, I don't think are really justified. So let's talk about prioritization. There are, I think, fundamentally two dimensions to prioritizing sustainability. One is a sustainability/stakeholder perspective, where you're ultimately looking at that broader triple bottom line, environmental effects, social effects, and broader economic effects of individual issues. The lead question really is, what are the potential ESG issues where the company has the most significant impact on environment and society, and which are most important to stakeholders? And this is where regulators, consumers, NGOs, and investors' points of views are really taken into account. What they think and expect, is kind of an outside-in view of the important sustainability issues for the company. But naturally, there's also a commercial consideration that is to be had. And when I say this, I often hear people asking, can we really look at these sustainability or social environmental issues from such a cold-blooded commercial perspective? And yeah, I've often been in conversations where people say that appears wrong to look at sustainability, things like climate change in a commercial manner. From an ethical point of view. But my view on that is that it's really the contrary. I think it's the social responsibility of the business to think about its important sustainability issues in a commercial way. And that's because one of the things that business does really well in society, better than other parts of society, is it optimizes resource allocation. All businesses operate under very scarce resources and are really good at figuring out how to reach maximum impact with minimum input. And this is actually an opportunity for sustainability. By focusing the sustainability efforts on those issues that are most relevant to the business model, to their core capabilities and the market forces they operate under, they can actually make a real difference for the achievement of society's sustainability objectives. This also means that we can't really expect businesses to solve all of society's sustainability challenges. Some out there are going to be quite hard to align with dynamics and markets and industries, and that's really where other stakeholders need to step in, governments particularly, and need to start shifting the rules of the game or adopt other actions. But a few more words on the commercial consideration. Sustainability issues can be relevant to business success via what I would say 4 key value drivers. One is revenues, another is costs, and there are risks and intangibles. A few more words on these. Now, revenues. If your product is positively differentiated in the marketplace through sustainability characteristics, then you're quite likely to be able to command a premium price for it, or at least to have your customers choose it over other products, as I said. In the consumer goods sector, for example, credible claims for the respect of human rights in the upstream supply chain might help you command a premium price. We're seeing that in, for example, chocolates. Tony Chocolonely is one of the first brands that really made a strong commitment to reducing slavery in the cocoa industry, which is not a mean feat, slavery and child labor. And they've gone about it in a more rigorous manner than most other companies, and they do manage to sell their company at a significant premium in return. If you look in supermarket shelves, and are looking at premium products that are trying to do this, well, actually, you will barely find them, especially in the food industry. Another example for this revenue-driving effect of sustainability is really if you crack a major sustainability challenge of an industry. So, simple example, if you manage to find a solution for the propulsion of vehicles with minimum environmental impact, then you stand to open up a very attractive commercial opportunity for yourself. That would be a new product service, and it's probably an explanation why there's a lot of investor interest and corporate interest and stakeholder interest in hydrogen fuels and the potential to make a difference in the transport industry. Now, if you crack that, you are solving the environmental challenges that are currently inherent in both the fossil-fueled engines as well as electric vehicles. Not that there aren't any new ones, but yeah, this is an interesting revenue-driving opportunity. With costs, another value driver that I mentioned, the obvious connections between resource efficiency and environmental impacts. Less use of finite resources, i.e. fossil-based fuels, less impact on the environment, and simultaneously less use, less costs. But there are other factors. Costs of capital or insurance, for example, may also go down if you manage critical ESG issues. A number of companies have managed to issue green bonds at preferential rates. I mean, heck, even the German government is doing it now. And when it comes to insurance policies, if nowadays you want to take out a long-term insurance policy for an industry, a production facility that you're building, the insurance is likely to have a look at, for example, climate change-related predictions for the area that you're building this site in, and factoring that into its risk calculation. So that's something you want to be thinking about as you start designing those plants and deciding on locations. Then there are various risks: ethical and integrity risk, regulatory risks, and compliance risks. So, for example, a big regulatory risk at the moment is one around diligence around social and environmental issues in the supply chain. This is only regulated to a very limited degree in the moment, but there are fierce debates in Germany, and there are plans to regulate this kind of thing in Europe over the course of the next year. And last but not least, there's a bunch of intangible value drivers. And much of that has to do with with the fact that companies are becoming more and more transparent, whether they want it or not. Even if you're not publishing a report, there will be entities out there, ESG rating agencies, NGOs, that are looking at larger companies and forming and communicating opinions about their sustainability. And how sustainable a company looks will shape brand value, its ability to attract and retain talent, and also the degree to which it will see resistance or support from stakeholders such as local communities. So we feel every time you think about which sustainability issues deserve the most attention, these commercial considerations need to take place. But then it also becomes a question of, well, what do you do in relation to them? And this is a framework which I think may help you think about this. So, in regards to this framework, what we have here is an overview of different behaviors that companies adopt and what it yields to them. Some companies are on the road in a rather short-termist manner. They focus on short-term profit maximization and pay limited attention to environmental and social issues. This sounds like it shouldn't be happening. Well, the reality is, my experience is that most companies show some degrees of short-termism in some areas, albeit they're often not exactly cognizant of the associated non-compliances. Typical issues where such non-compliance exists is waste and packaging issues, reporting, management of labor conditions in the own workforce. But clearly, that's a pretty risky situation. You could end up paying fines, or even have your license to operate revoked. Then there's a already more prominent approach, which is legal compliance. That's where you basically do what you're expected to do by law: manage operational waste, ensure the environmental compliance of your products, meet reporting requirements such as the EU Reporting Directive, deal with basic stuff such as gender equality at the workplace. And really, when you're doing this, the main value driver you're playing to are legal risks. They're reduced. Possibly you're reducing potential costs around fines. But it's fair to say that your revenues are still going to be at risk from competition with a more proactive approach to sustainability. When it comes to proactive and responsive behavior, that's really about aligning your business, how it operates, its value chain, with societal expectations as they evolve over time, somewhat independent or at least proactive to regulation. A key example here is climate change. It's not yet, despite all the talk about climate change, it's not yet an explicit legal requirement for all companies to know and disclose their carbon footprint. And to have a think on, what are my main contributions as a company to climate change. But it's also fair to say that the company that doesn't at least begin to do this is seriously out of touch with societal development. I know few employees that don't care about what their employers do in this space. I know few consumers that don't care what companies do in this space. Reality is that the more exposed the company is to capital markets or public opinion, the more likely it is to suffer from negative effects or failure to align with such societal expectations. And the way I look at it, failure to align with such expectations will over time curtail the company's ability to grow. Going back to those value drivers I mentioned earlier, the proactive and responsive approach really means you're reducing all sorts of risks, protecting revenues, and possibly improving your cost base as well. And then the highest state of evolution, in my view, is being part of the solution. And that's where we can really start talking about leadership. Earlier, I started this conversation with risk. I'm ending on leadership because this is really where you go beyond risks. It means you're using your core competencies, business model, the core competencies and the potential of your business model or business model that you might pursue with your competencies to really align with key sustainability challenges out there, and that you figure out problems that aren't yet solved in the industry, whether that's in your own operations, in your supply chain, or in your product. We often think of smaller companies when we think of sustainability leaders, like Patagonia, the textile brand, or EcoVer, the clean detergent producer. But it's fair to say that there's also a number of large companies who have adopted and become part of the solution in parts of what they do. BASF is such a company who more than a decade ago already started implementing a sustainability portfolio steering solution for the entire product range, which greatly helps in shift, which was an operational innovation that other companies hadn't done at the time, and which really helped the company drive towards sustainability in their entire product portfolio, and which also set a standard and a new best practice for other companies to follow. A really good and very prominent example is Toyota. We all know the Prius, which basically demonstrated that hybrid vehicles can be sold at scale, and it was Toyota with the Prius that broke through achieved a breakthrough for the hybrid vehicle market. And the rewards really of that is that you get a seat at the table. You become somebody who is asked on how things should be structured when it comes to sustainability. What should be the rules of the game? The German government is more likely to invite you to consultations. Customers are going to see you more differentiated in your marketplace. And there are significant revenue opportunities. So as I said, leadership is the point where you go beyond responding to risks on what I started with and really becoming part of that solution, and then helping the world to overcome some of the sustainability challenges. So how do you know you're ready? Well, one is leadership expresses itself in leadership. That means the company's most senior leaders are actually not just talking about sustainability, but really walking it. You see it in your corporate strategy. It's part of your strategy. It's part of your innovation agenda. You see it in your collaboration efforts. Most of the tough sustainability challenges aren't something that you can solve alone. You'll need to at least align with customers, suppliers, but potentially also a broader ecosystem, potentially even outside of the industry. There's functional integration. A lot of companies start out with a central sustainability function, but then over time, sustainability is commonly embedded into all relevant functional processes and responsibilities. And a sustainability team can't really get it done alone. It needs to be part of innovation, R&D, procurement, controlling, so on and so forth. Controlling a point in itself, what gets measured gets managed. Various ERP systems in various companies are increasingly integrating sustainability metrics, and that's clearly the way to go. And last but not least, we have a very strong cultural dimension to sustainability. It won't really grip and get traction if it's not a value for employees. I mean, we see it in Deloitte ourselves. People are really, really excited by doing stuff to advance the sustainability agenda. It secures progress towards sustainability. If people believe in it, if people want it, it drives innovation. And ultimately, that also then needs to reflect itself in leadership. I think they are the ones that shape the culture most strongly. So much to my little session here. Happy to take any questions you may have via the chat. I will also be hanging out in the room for another half an hour if you have any questions and you want to talk to me directly. I hope I am seeing potential questions. Okay, so session is nearly over. Let me just end with, repeating, I'll be hanging out in this meeting room for a little longer in case you would like to speak to me. Otherwise, you can download this presentation later and my contact details on the back. I would welcome hearing from you. Okay, I've got a question on culture as a driver. Well, culture as a driver, I think fair to say that's probably the least of my expertise as a kind of hardcore consultant. But what I can tell you is that I see massive differences in the degree to which companies and their employees are driven by sustainability. I worked with I'll give you an example. I worked with a tobacco company that wanted to get into the heated tobacco space, which is arguably considerably less harmful for health than people. And this was a company that hadn't changed really anything about the operating model for 30 years. I have rarely seen a company where people were more excited about this shift in their business model, because I think they were all bugged by the inherent unsustainability of the business model that they were in. And I've also rarely seen people in a company so motivated to really drive that cause, make it happen. I think it's the belief in the possibility to change that is often demonstrated by credible leaders that really makes a difference for the degree to which a sustainability vision can be accomplished. Okay, any other questions? All right, I just received another question here. There seems to be growing distrust of information. How can companies help people to decipher between fake news and what is real? Good question. Well, one obvious thing that you can do as a company is you can have external players respond to your, you can have external parties review your sustainability claims. So we do that as an auditing company, but it could also be done via certification systems. Some of them are good, some of them aren't. It takes a close look depending on your industry, but generally to have third-party audited sustainability report, for example, is a good way to go. I think the other one is data granularity. Instead of bold claims, talk about what you've done in the past, or if you're talking about future claims, try and be specific about how you're going to get there. There's a lot of hollow commitments and phrases out there, yeah, let's go beyond those. Okay, das war, soweit ich weiß, die letzte Frage. Dann verabschiede ich mich von Ihnen. Herzlichen Dank. Und ich hoffe, es hat Sie interessiert. Kommen Sie gerne jederzeit wieder auf mich zu. Danke. Tschüss.